Welcome to the National Institute for Health and Care Research and the Mentoring Programme Professional Development Series. I'm Julie Haddock-Millar and I support with the training and evaluation of the programme. In this webinar, we'll be understanding and cultivating our networks within the context of mentoring. We're going to focus on how we analyse our network and really understand what our current network looks like. We'll also look at how we cultivate our network and our signpost the resources that accompany this session. There are often 5 key steps that we might look at in a mentoring conversation when thinking about understanding and cultivating networks. And the 5 steps are outlined below. Exploring what is a network, appreciating why it's important, particularly in the context of career and professional development, conducting a network audit, understanding our network density, and then really focusing and drilling down on how we build effective networks. Now, often within the context of mentoring, when mentees arrive at mentoring, thoughts about networks are quite varied. Sometimes we might think about the inhibitors, and that might be challenges and issues around confidence, for example. I don't know if I have anything to offer. Or it doesn't feel authentic to approach people outside of my network. I feel that relationships should be spontaneous. On the other side, we often have facilitators, really understanding that networking is integral to our professional development and that it's very much two-way. We give and we receive. So there are different ways of thinking about networks, and it's useful to explore this, perhaps at the beginning of a mentoring conversation. Now, leaders, of course, know that networking is essential to their role. And here on this slide, we can see some of the benefits around building and maintaining connections and investment in those leadership skills. We also know that social networks are important, particularly to support us in our career development around job and career needs, for example. And here we can see some of those aspects outlined on the slide. There are various approaches to mentoring, all of which can be helpful in different contexts and different situations. Now, there's a lot of text on this slide, so we've got more in the resources where you can read more about these different approaches and really just take your time to think through what approach might work best for you and why, and how context might influence that, whether it's sponsorship, developmental, reverse, or reciprocal. And of course, there are other types of mentoring too. So what is a network? Lots of theory out there, but quite a simple diagram here is by Professor Herminia Ibarra. And she describes 3 different kinds of networks: operational, personal, and strategic, all of which are important in relation to our growth and development. And she outlines the purpose, the location and time frame that we may want to consider, and those key relationships that we often see within those 3 different types of network. Now, in Ibarra's work, Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader, Ibarra discusses network advantage. And this is the breadth and connectivity and really how dynamic our relationships are and our network is. So we can really think about this in the context of a conversation around developing networks, how strong our relationships are within a diverse range of contexts, so that the breadth, the capacity to link or bridge across people, so that connectivity, and this dynamic set of extended ties that evolves over time as we evolve, as we develop. It's a really helpful framework to think about networks. Of course, why is our network important? There are so many reasons, of course: keeping us informed, helping us to become more innovative, giving us a sounding board to test new ideas, very much one of those roles that we associate with mentoring, for example. A useful activity that we can undertake within the context of mentoring and networks is to conduct a network audit. And it's really helpful because it helps us to understand the balance, for example, between internal and external relationships, those 3 different types of networks outlined earlier, and really to help us to think about the connectivity within our networks. So Ibarra provides a number of tools to help us to do this, and she very helpfully outlines them in a number of key steps. And the first step in this is to think of 10 people whom we've discussed perhaps important work matters with over the last few months. We might have gone to those people for advice, bounce ideas off, really think through some opportunities, for example. And so we write those down on this diagram here. The second step is then to take some time to look at those 10 individuals that we've listed, or there might be less, and to think about the 3 strengths of those individuals and that group of people, and the 3 weaknesses. And this is really helpful in a mentoring conversation to utilise the mentor as a sounding board and to act as a sounding board for the mentors, to help the mentee think through their network and those connections that they've utilised within the last few months. So that's the first 2 steps of the network audit that's outlined. And then understanding our network density. So what is it? It's understanding the extent to which our network is closely connected. It's quantifiable. And so for some colleagues, they really like the fact that we can quantify it. For others, it's the conversation perhaps that is more important, what messages that we see within that. And it helps us to identify perhaps some of those weaknesses, how we might cultivate new relationships and grow our networks. So again, it's a 2-step process that is outlined by Ibarra in the book that I showed you earlier. And again, we're taking those 10 contacts, we're listing them on the left-hand side, and then we're looking to see whether those 10 contacts know one another. So again, we're utilising this tool to help us to do that. And the second stage of the tool is then to calculate the network density. And again, there's a number of steps that we follow here in order to do that. Now, the key to these activities, it's not necessarily the quantifiable number here that we might get, but it's the conversation that we have together as a mentee and a mentor to help explore this. So when we've completed the second part of the exercise, we might then want to look at the degree to which our contacts are like us, the birds of a feather. Is our network about our past, not about the future? Perhaps those contacts haven't changed. It's the same group of contacts that have been within our network for the last year or 2 or 3 years, for example. Are all the contacts internal, so they all know one another? Do those contacts see us doing the same thing? So pigeonholing us, for example. And what does all of that mean within the conversation around networks? Now, another way to consider networks in a different type of diagram is really to have ourselves in the centre and then to look at all those individuals around us that provide this level of support. So whether it's a mentor or a coach or a cheerleader, perhaps a sponsor that we might have, someone that connects us, that guides us, might be a role model, a teacher, for example. So really thinking through all of these different roles and who we have within our network that supports us in these areas. Now, another way to think about this is who we give support to. So identifying those roles and where we occupy those roles and we support others within our network. So the giving and receiving, that reciprocal aspect of networking that's so incredibly important. And then the final stage in the mentoring conversation is building effective networks. How do we go about doing that? Really thinking through ideas and suggestions and opportunities. And of course, there are many different activities we can invest time in to grow our network. And we might want to look at the balance between the internal and external. To be active rather than passive. To think about our communities of interest, our extracurricular activities, to go broader than our immediate professional networks, for example. Thinking about multiple mentors or a coach and a mentor, for example, and thinking both internally and externally with the mentoring offer. A mentee and a mentor. So are we both acting as mentee and mentor? Do we provide both? So really useful ideas to really think about how you can invest and grow and expand your network, and both giving and receiving, those 2 important aspects. So overall, 5 key steps in the conversation around understanding and cultivating our networks. Now, we have produced a topic guide to support you with this particular area, and within the topic guide, you'll find links to further reading. There's also the email for our support team, should you have any questions about the mentoring programme or need any support with the resources or topic guide. Thank you for listening.